Shulchan Aruch, Siman, Kuf Samechet, 168. And we're discussing, again, we're reviewing this halakha. I will review for you outside, so you don't have to read it again in the interest of time. And for those of you who think it's boring to hear this halakha again, I dare you to tell me the halakha on your own without me telling it to you first. You take dough that is of the consistency of challah dough. And instead of baking it in the oven, you take it and throw it in a pot of water and boil it. Fully, so not like a bagel. You boil it completely in the pot of water. Or you take dough and you fry it in oil, like deep fry it in oil, like a donut. Even if you make it in the shape of bread, it looks like a pita, it looks like a, I don't know, whatever, like bread. What beracha is this bread that comes out, this dough that comes out? Mizonot and ala michya. V'yesh cholkim. Maran quotes, there are those who disagree. Those who disagree being Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says, no, if it comes out of the water or the oil looking like bread, as long as the dough was of the consistency of bread dough, it's not a consistency of pancake batter. It's a thick consistency, like real dough. That bread is hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So let's take for example a donut. What do I mean by a donut? What's the difference between a donut and a bagel? Don't tell me how you cook it. In the terms of shape, do they both look like bread? You want better than that?
Yeah, one is a cake, one is a bread.
Wait, better than that. Let's say the donut without the hole in the middle. So it looks like a little roll. Do you accept that? It looks like a roll? Like a dinner roll? It has a tzura denama. It looks like bread. So now, according to Tosafot, if you deep fry dough and it comes out of the oil, that bread is not mizonot, but hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Now the Rama makes it very clear. That's only on condition that the dough comes out looking like bread. But if it comes out looking like pasta or spaghetti or anything else that has a thick batter, but it's thick dough, but it comes out not like bread, then even Tosafot would agree that the blessing on Rabbeinu Tam would agree that the blessing on this is mizonot and not hamotzi. Maran, in an unusual turn of events, Maran tells us that someone who's a Yirei Shamayim, and we spoke earlier about what it really means to be Yirei Shamayim, someone who's Yirei Shamayim should try to avoid this scenario and should eat this food in the middle of a meal where he already said hamotzi on the bread. That way you can avoid the problem of which bracha to make. Now again, remember, you shouldn't do that for dessert because some people, you have to make a bracha on dessert, in which case you got yourself in problems all over again. I wanted to point out, because I told you last time we studied this halakha and before the car crashed into the wall, that according to Maran, the main halakha is that this bread is mizonot and this bread is not hamotzi. But Maran, he did this thing where he says when someone who's God-fearing should be careful. And what automatically clicks in people's brain is, I'm God-fearing, I want to be careful. And we're almost neglecting the first halakha because of a later statement that makes us say that maybe the regular halakha of just saying mizonot is not good enough. Correct? So I wanted to show you two places in halakha where this conversation actually has a practical ramification and what Maran rules there. So look at the bottom of page 469, sorry. You see the paragraph on the bottom left? Umaran HaShulchan Aruch. Maran HaShulchan Aruch. Kan, here. Hevi shitat Rabbeinu Shimshon Bistam. He quotes the opinion of Rabbeinu Shimshon as the main opinion. Mizonot. This dough is mizonot. V'shitat Rabbeinu Tam, in the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, b'shem yesh cholkim, those who argue. And even though you'll normally the halakha between stam and yesh omrim is like the first or the second? The first. Maran qualifies this, and he concludes, Shirei Shamayim yitzei yedei shnehem, that a Yirei Shamayim should fulfill both opinions, v'lo yochlem el al yidei shivarech alechem acher tchila. And you should only eat them after you eat, for sure, certain hamotzi bread. Umashman, it seems, shemikar adin, that according to the basic halakha posek, כרבנו שמשון, that he rules like the first opinion. וכמו שכתב בהדיעה בבית יוסף, ושכן מנהג העולם. And he writes this in the בית יוסף, and that's the custom of the world. וכן מבואר בהדיעה בשולחן ערוך, יורה דעה, סימן שין, כ"ט. And this is what's explicitly written in the Shulchan Aruch, in Yore De'ah, in chapter Shin Chaf Tet. What is chapter Shin Chaf Tet? Somebody has Safari in front of you?
29.
Yeah, what the number? Yes, but what's the chapter about? Shin Chaf Tet says Maran, Eze pat chayav bechala. Which bread, which dough, meaning, requires challah to be taken from it. Yeah. So if you go to Yore De'ah, chapter 329, in Halacha Gimel, Maran writes the following words: Isa, dough, sheblilata ava, which has a thick consistency to it. So far, it's exactly the same halacha. V'gilgila al dat levashla o letagna, and you're rolling this bread with the thought that you are going to boil it or fry it. O la'asota sufganin, or you're going to turn it into donuts. O liyabsha b'chama, or you're going to dry this dough in the sun. V'asaken, and that's what you do. Petura. It's exempt from taking challah from this dough. What is Maran telling you his opinion is regarding challah? This dough that in Orach Chaim, Maran is not sure, should you say mezonot or hamotzi? What is he telling you here? It's mezonot. Why? Because if it was a hamotzi, you would have to take challah from it. If you have to take challah from it, that makes it bread. Yes.
I guess you'd be saying it's also not a case of him being in doubt and not saying a beracha on it because he would tell you to do that. Like he's confident.
Very good. So why does Maran not bring Rabbeinu Tam here? Why doesn't he say, oh, well, too bad. Over here, you should try to maybe do it with another dough. Why doesn't Maran call Rabbeinu Tam here? Because his opinion is always like the first one. And the HaShamayim, for whatever reason, he added that qualifier. But you find now in a second place in Shulchan Aruch, that he's telling you that this dough is a mizonot dough. But that poses a different problem. If this dough is a mizonot dough, so what is its status in terms of, think about another halakha that has to do with bread. Yore De'ah also. I don't have the volume with me. Yeah. Do you know the halakhot? Who knows Yore De'ah a little bit? Kuf Yud Bet. What's Kuf Yud Bet? Kuf Yud Dalet. Kuf Yud Bet, 112. What are those halakhot? Al-Khanan was here on Sunday handing out dojo points. You get a dojo point if you're get the Kuf Yud Bet first.
No, non-Jewish bread.
Very good. Pat shel goyim, bread baked by non-Jews. Yes? Kuf Yud Gimel, the laws of food cooked by non-Jews. Kuf Yud Bet, Maran tells us, okay, you really have to know how to read Maran well to understand anything Maran writes in Kuf Yud Bet. But the bottom line is that bread that non-Jews baked, permissible for Jewish consumption. As long as it was baked.
By professional, not on someone's bread.
Very good. So first it has to be kosher, but as long as it's baked in a commercial setting and not in a private setting, like someone's home. Okay, the whole prohibition of eating non-Jewish bread is, why do the rabbis prohibit us from eating non-Jewish bread? Not because of kashrut. If kashrut, that would be a problem. So we wouldn't become close with each other and intermarry. Meaning, I move to the neighborhood, my next door neighbor wants to bring me a challah, and now I'm eating food, or our kids are going to play, and the next thing we know, our kids are getting married. Chachamim made a decree against it. In a commercial setting, what are the chances of me knowing that person's child? Or even them? It's not. And therefore, Chachamim seem to have repealed their gizah. Now, this is much conversation. I'm simplifying a very complicated area of halakha. But I used to give a shiur in Kuf Yud Bet. I don't know what happened to that shiur. But we were studying this for a long time. This area of halakha, Rabbi Yosef, I think, used to be with us over there. Yeah? Remember that? Okay. Don't worry, it was my least consistent shiur possible, so it probably fell apart because of me, not because of anybody else. This halacha is important. It's important because what is the status of donuts in halakha? Zev, don't you struggle with this every day? What is the halachic status of a donut? Can you eat a donut that's baked by somebody who's not Jewish? Is it bread or is it food? Food that's cooked by someone who's not Jewish, even in a commercial setting, you can't eat it. Ashira, you asked me about vegan restaurants on Saturday night. Here's the beginning to the answer to your question. There are certain foods. What's the qualification? In order for a food to be prohibited when cooked by someone non-Jewish, it has to be something that you cannot eat raw, and something that is served at a king's table, at a royal table. So it has to be an important food. It has to be a food that you cannot eat raw. If someone cooks for you tomatoes, onions, and they make salsa for you, okay? Tomatoes, onions, hot peppers, salt, whatever else they do. And they cook it for you in a kosher pan in your house. Is the salsa kasher or not? Yes. Now what if they decide to make this recipe into a disaster and they add zucchinis into it and potatoes and I don't know, whatever, eggs they're going to put in there. Are you allowed to eat that salsa? No. Why? Because those are all things that are not eaten right. Now you could argue, don't jump on me, you can argue that this is a bad case because this food, this horrible zucchini, potato, egg salsa would never be served at a royal table. Fine. Pretend. Just indulge for a moment. Yes? So what makes the difference is that are donuts able to become do donuts become prohibited because they're cooked by non-Jews or not? Because donuts are made in oil. In oil. Just oil. They're not using ovens. They're using oil. This is a machloket, which we're not going to have time to go through in depth tonight. And it's a machloket between Chacham Ovadia Yosef and Yichaveh Dat. Chacham Ovadia Yosef was asked this question in the 5th volume of Yichaveh Dat, Halakha 53. Sufganiyot, donuts, hanasot alidei goyim, that are made by non-Jews, b'misadot uvatei ha'archa shel Yehudim, in restaurants and hotels of Jews. Hayim mutar la'ochlan, is it permissible to eat them? Or are they prohibited because of Bishul Goyim? Rabbi Shalom Mesas, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, not Rabbi Yosef Mesas, who was the chief rabbi of Haifa. Rabbi Shalom Mesas is asked this question as well, and I didn't mark it off in my book. It doesn't make a difference right now. If you need the source, I will get it for you. Rabbi Yosef Mesas argues with Chacham Ovadia Yosef. He doesn't accept it. Chacham Ovadia Yosef says the bottom line is the donuts are bread. If you want to be machmir, the good chumrah that you should have is at least the fire should be lit by someone who's Jewish, meaning that's like the Ashkenazi opinion of turning on the fire. Okay, then it makes all the donuts okay. Even though for food that wouldn't work. But in a case like this one, where the donuts are probably okay, but we're just not sure, so that would help. Sphinge, right. We're not talking about the sweet element of it is not, it's the dough we're worried about. Yeah? Like in Morocco, so the donuts were dough, and they were covered with lemon honey or other things like that. That's what you put on them. So, when it comes to this halakha, Rabbi Shalom Mesas says, no, I'm sorry, the donuts are a food, they're not bread, and because of that, donuts that are baked in a non-Jewish bakery, all of them are forbidden for consumption. Very good. Hara Peretz, when I bugged him about this, seemed to lean towards Rabbi Shalom Mesas on this one. But also reminded me, this entire halakha here is darabanan. Everything here is rabbinic. And there's room to utilize, not what he said to do, but I'm telling you, there's room to utilize this opinion that safek darabanan the kula, that when in doubt as to rabbinic law, you can be lenient. I'm not telling you now psak halakha about Krispy Kremes. I'm simply telling you that this machloket, if you want to study it, it's a famous machloket between Chacham Ovadia Yosef and Rabbi Shalom Mesas, to the point where Rabbi Shalom Mesas was of the opinion that if there was a restaurant that served donuts in Jerusalem, they should lose their kashrut license. Unless they have a Jewish person baking those donuts or cooking those donuts, in his words. And I urge you to not just listen to this on face value. Chacham Odia wrote a teshuvah, about 10 pages. Rabbi Shalom Masas, maybe like 30 pages of a teshuvah. It's a very long teshuvah, very lengthy. But it's worth it. If I had time to sit with you and talk about donuts, maybe in honor of Chanukah one year, we'll study the laws of donuts. But until then, I didn't want to leave you off without showing you that this halakha that we're dealing with here, and you wonder, like, when's the next time I'm frying dough? It has practical ramifications both to the laws of challah, which Maran himself shows you that he holds like the first opinion, and in the laws of bishulei goyim, pachal goyim, even if it's indirectly, but whether or not donuts are a food or donuts are baked bread. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to misquote him. I believe that Rabbi Rafael Aharon ben Shimon. Do you know who Rabbi Rafael ben Shimon was? You were catching up on the Expanding Horizons classes. You didn't get to that one yet. Rabbi Rafael Aharon ben Shimon. Anybody here know who Rabbi Rafael Aharon ben Shimon was? Some of you are nodding, so say something. One of my favorite chachamim.
He's in Nahar Mitzrayim, no?
Very good. He wrote a book, Nahar Mitzrayim, among other books. He was a North African rabbi born in Israel. Maybe not born in Israel, but his father was the rabbi of the Ma'aravi, the Moroccan North African community in Jerusalem. His father was Rabbi David ben Shimon, otherwise known as Tzuf Devash, David ben Shimon, Hani. The Beit Knesset in the old city of Jerusalem is still named Tzuf Devash. I would pray there on Shabbat. It's one of the few Sephardic Beit Knesset in Yerushalayim where you can get a whole Kabbalat Shabbat and not the Yerushalmi half a Kabbalat Shabbat and half a Lechadudi and half of everything else that happens over there. If you know what I'm talking about, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. And then his son became the rabbi in Egypt, was the chief rabbi in Egypt. I mention him in the context of the story of the Sanhedrin in my UK class because his colleague was Rabbi Aharon. See, I told you no. Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaKohen. Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaKohen was an Ashkenazi rabbi who, after being disowned by the Ashkenazi community politics in Egypt, was hired by Rabbi Rafael Aharon ben Shimon to sit on his Bet Adin. And Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaKohen was a fascinating personality. He was an Ashkenazi rabbi, the rabbi of the Ashkenazim in Egypt, who sat on a Sephardic Bet Adin but dealt with Ashkenazi halachic matters, and he wanted to found the Sanhedrin in Israel. And the class that I taught then in the UK was about the conversation between Rabbi Rafael ben Shimon and Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaKohen about whether it was a good idea or not to found the Sanhedrin in our generation. Rabbi Rafael ben Shimon has the book Nahar Mitzrayim that you mentioned, Rabbi Yosef, in which he tells us all customs that happened in Egypt. And for example, there's interesting piece there about Chalav Yisrael. And he talks about whether the Jews in Egypt kept what you call Chalav Yisrael or not. And he says that it was the question there was whether you could trust the Karaites, who were prominent in Egypt, with milk that they milked. And he said really he was going to deal with the issue, but when he came to Egypt, he realized it's not really a problem. The reason is the way they would get milk is the milkman was very efficient. He didn't milk his cow and then bring the milk to your door. He would walk in the street with his cow. And he would stop at your house, and if you wanted milk, you would bring a jug from your home and literally milk the cow in your driveway or whatever that is, the front of your house. You milk the cow, put the milk home. So all the milk by default was Chalav Yisrael, whether or not you wanted it to be or not. Yes? And so for example, many people say, in Yemen, they kept Chalav Yisrael. Yeah, we never drank milk from Arabs. There was a Chacham in Bnei Barak, and he wrote a teshuvah saying, listen, that's true. What you remember is that we didn't drink milk from Arabs in Yemen. That's because in Yemenite tradition, dairy foods are not really consumed. People don't drink milk. Milk is not a beverage that Jews in Yemen drink. And because of that, you don't remember that they drank milk, and nobody drank milk from anybody, not even from Jews. The only time milk, maybe to make butter, they use milk or something. But it wasn't something like in America, people can drink gallons of milk. Even the cows don't drink milk when they grew up. But the people are still drinking milk. And so Rabbi Rafael ben Shimon is recording minhagim. And so to end, he said that when he came to Egypt, he saw that they were eating donuts that were made by the Arabs in Egypt, and he found a way to be matir, if I'm not mistaken, based on a similar line of logic. So I would recommend, if you have the book Nahar Mitzrayim, to go look what he says there about donuts as well. Chava, thank you for learning with me tonight, B'ezrat Hashem. Before I take any questions.